Hey guys, what is up? My name is PandaMaster, and it's almost the end of 2022. People are starting to come out with their Game of the Year lists, their best of the best. The Game Awards just wrapped up, but there's a game that not a whole lot of people are talking about that I am desperately trying to get on people's radar. And as you can suggest by the title and thumbnail of the video, yeah, it's Pentiment. So I think the reason that Pentiment is under the radar is that it's a small narrative adventure game, which in the days of big AAA experiences, kind of falls by the wayside. And also, it got completely snubbed by the Game Awards because, was perfectly in its rights to meet the deadlines for nomination, but for some reason wasn't included at all. And I think that's kind of BS. But whatever. So here I am, championing one of the best games of 2022 that not enough people are talking about. I don't know anybody who's played this game, and so the entire purpose of this video is to change that. So, first off, I'll give you a few bullet points. 1. It is one of the most captivating games I've ever played, because Obsidian they're masters of their craft. 2. It's got a beautiful art style. If you care at all about medieval art, which I'm sure not a lot of you do, but when I say care, I mean if you think it looks good in any way, in any sort of style, this game's gonna look good for you. It's a beautiful, beautiful game, and this is probably the biggest selling point of the game, is that it is a detective-ass detective game. Like, screw Batman. This right here is one of the best detective games. Screw the Sherlock Holmes games. Most of those are mid anyway. Nah, if you want a true detective game where you're just kind of let loose and just like, here's all the information that we can give you, which isn't much. It's realistic in that it's like, here's the kind of things that you're aware of beforehand. Be free. You've got like a week to figure this out. Godspeed. It's amazing because there's so much realism throughout where it's like, it's not like you have absolutely zero clue where to go. It's realistic in that you have certain leads, you have evidence, you have things that can point you in certain directions, but you have no idea what happened. No clue. You have very little to go on, and it's up to you to use your gut instincts based on the characters around you, how they respond to certain things, to try to figure out what the hell happened. And so, essentially, I'll give you a little background. So you play as Andreas Mahler, who is this aspiring artist in medieval Europe, working at a scriptorium, which is essentially this place in the church that would make copies of books. So where this is set, when this is set, the printing press is just becoming a thing. So they're kind of in this transitional period where scriptoriums and people who copy books by hand are kind of losing their business because now you have these machines to do it for you. Sound familiar, anybody? There's a lot of history in this game, a lot of history, but none of it's necessarily needed to know beforehand. It'll just kind of enrich the experience the more you know about it. There's also a whole glossary in the game that will explain things in more depth if you want to know. If you're thinking about like, oh, why is this person mentioning St. Petersburg? It gives you a little more information on where that's from. Like, oh, has nothing to do with the situation. That's a little suspicious. Something like that, where if you might not be able to catch it, the game will help you. But it's not like it's giving you a full Wikipedia page on, these things that they're referencing. So it's not something you really need to better understand the story. It's just nice. It's just nice. If I had to explain this game in one word, it's just nice. And I don't mean that in a bad way at all. Like it's not amazing or anything like that. It's just great. It's great. But anyway, you work at a scriptorium, and then a murder occurs. It's a classic medieval murder mystery, and it's up to you to figure out who done it. And it's just phenomenal. It's fantastic. For one, you play as Andreas, right? You get to completely tinker around with his background. You make decisions on where he went to study for college, because that influences the game significantly. For instance, if you studied in France, then you have a deeper understanding of French texts. So if there's a lead that has to deal with this scripture that's written in French and you don't know French, you're cut off from that lead. You can't understand it. Maybe you can get someone to help you that knows French, but if you don't have a good relationship with that person, they're not going to help you out. And so the decisions you make in the game drastically affect the outcome in terms of who you think did it, because the thing is that there's so many people with all sorts of different motives, and so they never really tell you. The game ends, like the overall story is wrapped up, you get a resolution, but there's so many unanswered questions in the game simply because that's life, you know? Like, the game does a fantastic job of relaying the sense that, realistically speaking, you're never gonna know exactly what occurred. You can only take your best stab at what happened. It's such a well put together game. Everything's significant, everything matters, and it just makes it all that more captivating. As far as the gameplay goes, I would describe it as a narrative puzzle game, because you're walking around, there's no combat, there's no... It's just going around talking to people, which sounds like something that's really boring. And like I said, this isn't necessarily going to be for everybody. This is primarily for people who love story, right? I would consider it more like an interactive TV show than anything else. Narrative puzzles. You have to think about what you have to say to certain people to get them on your side. Because again, if you make the wrong decisions, you're screwed out of a lead, and that could potentially have you get the wrong person killed. Because the thing is that you have the power. You're essentially, for some reason in this game, judge, jury, and executioner. Your word is law. So you choose who gets the axe. And your choices could get the wrong person killed. But the thing is, you're never going to know. That's the thing. Like I said, like the story has a resolution. I'm trying to avoid spoilers here. So you're going to know overall how everything ends and who's the mastermind and stuff like this. Because there's someone pulling strings, essentially. So I don't want to say that the game doesn't wrap itself up, but there's stuff you're not going to know, and you could put an innocent man to death if you're not careful and you're not using your time wisely and making the right decisions. And, you know, sometimes you fail, and there's no going back. There's only so much you can do and so much inferences you can make, especially in medieval times. You know, you don't have access to technology to help you out. It's literally just searching and being as thorough as you possibly can. And, you know, there's certain things where you can go run around the town and just search every nook and cranny, and you can find stuff that doesn't alter it. So exploration is definitely key in this game. You know, exploring as much as you can, because you can just stumble upon evidence, and it's not going to pass any time. But then, again, there's certain investigations that will yield a lot more evidence or credibility to certain leads. Those are going to advance your time. And so it's being as thorough as possible, but also... again, just trying to use your gut and doing your best, and that's the best you can do. And it's just so good because every character is just so well thought out. I'll get into it later, but like, just chef's kiss. In terms of the setting, it's like I said, just some of the most beautiful and most well thought out environments I've seen in a game, because it's not about the textures or the realistic graphics, obviously. But, like, Obsidian did their research. You know, every single pixel in this game looks like it's plucked straight out of some medieval art, you know? A lot of it seems like something Andreas himself came up with. And they'll also have moments where they have art from different regions, and they will look distinctively different, like African art versus Bosnian art versus French art. They have their differences. Like, the attention to detail in this game is absurd. I mean, you think of the sound design, it's very subtle in that there's all these little things in the environments that create a strong sense of atmosphere when you don't even really think about it. Like when you're in the scriptorium and you have the echo because of the high walls of the little scribbling, and so it sounds like these sounds are heightened because of the echo and everything. You can just hear everything a lot more distinctively, versus outside you can kind of hear like the little wisps of the wind and the birds chirping, and it just feels more open versus this sort of cold, dense air that seems to be in the scriptorium or in like more closed off cavernous areas. It's very subtle but very effective. And again, like, it just feels like this team of 13 people, mind you. 13 people made this game. It started out with just 2. and made over the last few years just a passion project from Josh Sawyer, who, if you don't know, was the director and lead designer on Fallout New Vegas. So just saying, this is Fallout New Vegas's successor game, which technically he worked on Pillars of Eternity, but those games are kind of hit or miss depending on who you are. But there's just so much attention to detail and love here, and I'll get into it in more encapsulating way later on, but it's a love letter to medieval Europe. As far as the history goes, it's chock full of references. You know, I'm not a huge history buff, but I enjoy history. But, like, you know, I grew up in a Lutheran background, and towards the beginning of the game, I was just happening to talk about Martin Luther, because when the game is set, it's around the time where Luther is pinning up the 95 Theses and starting the beginnings of what would become Lutheranism. And so this person is having a discussion with me and saying, you know, is this guy a kook? Like, do you believe what he's saying? And it was a really interesting discussion because I knew what was going on. I understood the lore, and I was like, oh yeah, hell yeah, screw the Catholic Church, you know? Like, I was like, man is 100% right. And so, like, different things you can understand because of the references, but again, you don't need to, because they were explaining things in a way that wasn't over-explaining. It's not like you're getting all this, like, historical lore that you have to slog through. It's a very natural conversation that, again, the glossary can help you out if you're a little bit confused, but otherwise it does a great job of naturally integrating context throughout. And that's part of what makes a story so goated. I mean, Obsidian is one of the greatest storytellers in the medium right now, easily. Andreas is a complex character fueled by your choices, just like everyone else is. Everyone is multidimensional. Like, there would be a character I wouldn't spend a ton of time with in the first act just for them to come back in the second act and, like, show all this complexity. And again, it's not that I even couldn't spend time with them in the first act. You can talk to pretty much anybody and everybody's gonna have something to say. Even if it's not quite as significant to the story currently, it probably will be later on, and they have depth to them. Everybody is thought out in this game, and everybody's got their own motivations and their own identity, and it's just so well thought out, just the amount of care put into this game. And like I said, you never truly know the full story, so it just begs you to go back for more. As far as the dialogue itself goes, it's always natural. It's always in place. I never felt like there was dialogue happening simply to move the story forward, or that this thing happened just because, you know, they needed something to... It all felt in place. It felt natural. It felt like it was supposed to be there and could be there in actual medieval Europe back then. The entirety of this story made complete sense. You can tell there is no company pressure whatsoever on this game. And so because of that, they had the freedom to do whatever they wanted. And that's what they did. And so there's just... It doesn't feel like there's any outside pressure to this game, and it shows. And we need more games like this. Games that are just something they want to make. This isn't money driven. This isn't, you know... This isn't driven by anything, really, except love for the craft. And that's why I cannot recommend it enough. If you care at all about adventure games, even just a passing, like, you played Monkey Island or The Walking Dead and like that, but overall don't play much adventure games, if you've ever enjoyed an adventure game, I beg of you, especially if you care about story, you gotta play Pentiment. I'm going to replay it. Hopefully at the beginning of the year, I want to replay it. Maybe even play it a third time. Who knows? Because there's just so many branching things that I'm curious about and wanting to, and figuring out how, you know, killing someone else might affect the story and like stuff, like, you know, all sorts of different things. There's so many things that I'm still curious about with the game after knowing the full story still. Like, well, again, I don't know the full story. After knowing kind of how things ended up, I'm ready to explore even more. And so hopefully I've convinced you guys, because I love this game. It's one of the best games of the year, one of the best adventure games I've ever played, like I've said countless times. But let me know, have you played Pentiment? What did you think? Let me know down in the comments below. For those that haven't, at least give it a couple hours, you know. I don't think it starts off slow necessarily, but again, it's one of those where it's for narrative people. So put some hours into it, stick it through. Once you get into the murder mystery stuff, it just completely unfolds, and just talking to everybody. The design's excellent, the sound's excellent, the narrative's excellent. It's just an excellent, fantastic game. But like if you like this video, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys next time for whatever it is I'm doing. But real quick before I go, I want to mention the fact that I do monthly giveaways, and this next month's giveaway is going to be Forspoken. A little bit of a divergence from Pentiment for sure, but I'm doing a giveaway of the game Monday, actually. If you're watching this as it's coming out or soon after, Monday I'm going to be doing a full playthrough of the demo that just came out for the Game Awards. So I'm going to be doing that on Monday night over on my Twitch, so go check that out. But as far as the giveaway goes, all you have to do to win a copy of the game on a platform of your choice is subscribe to my Twitch channel, which Tier 2 will grant you more entries if you're interested in that. Otherwise, you can just subscribe at Tier 1 and you're set. You enter to win. The giveaway will be done officially on January 24th. So that's when the game comes out. I'm going to be doing a launch stream. So don't necessarily run to the subscription just yet, because subs only last for a month. That would put you at, you know, January 11th at the time, you know, if you do it the day this video comes out. Unless you really want to sub and, you know, do another sub, then that would be sick, you know, support the channel and all that. Yeah, all you gotta do is subscribe over at my Twitch and you will be entered to win. But all you gotta do is be subbed as of January 24th. So you could wait to sub until that day, but you have to be subbed and you have to pop up in the stream. You have to show up at that launch stream. It's gonna be that Tuesday night, the 24th. I'm going to be streaming for a few hours, and you got to show up, and you got to let me know that you want to be entered to win. And I'll do the drawing right at the end of the stream, on stream, to make sure there's no silly shenanigans or riggedness about it, and get you that copy that night. And so if you want to win a copy of the game, that's all you got to do. So just getting it out there now. I'm going to have plenty of other opportunities of, like, you know, advertising it and getting it out into the world. But I wanted to let you guys know about that. So consider subscribing if you want to win a free copy of Forspoken. We'll see how it is. But anyway, peace out.